Kank. Kank. You love the Kank, Mike Manley. I know you love it. it's like wax on, wax off. How's everybody doing? Welcome back to the podcast.
How are you doing? You're dying.
All of a sudden, I got dust in my throat. Everybody,
those hands kicked up the digital
I know.
dust.
I kicked up some dust in the studio. Welcome everybody back to your favorite pandemic podcast, Pencil to Pencil, the weekly live podcast where 2 or 3, depending on
or 9,
cartoonists talk shop like you got a phone call from Mike Manley and see what that was.
I was like, oh god, him again. I'm not here.
If you're new to the podcast, well, hello. That's a famous hashtag of mine. What's going to happen here is that Mike and I, 2 well-seasoned cartoonists, are going to talk shop. This podcast is kind of like has been birthed from Mike's Draw magazine from Tomorrow's. All right. And as we all know, or most people know, that Draw magazine's been around for a while, and Mike is the editor.
20 years.
20 years, and Mike is the editor.
20 years.
And
I remember back
at issue 4.
That's my kneecap still hadn't formed yet.
That's right. Hey, what's going on? Where Mike has been doing that magazine for a long time. I've been a columnist for a long time. I've done interviews with a lot of cartoonists and other creative people in the industry. And I am also the crusty critic, giving you art supply advice and saving you money, because we all know that money's tight and the worst thing you can have is bad art supplies. So now that we're in 2020, what was it, 2019, 2020, we started talking about doing a different version of the podcast. Of the magazine. And
I think we had talked. Well, we wanted to do the podcast.
Yeah.
But when we started, we didn't have the visual. We just had the audio. Right. And now it seems like most people who do podcasts have switched over to doing both. Right. And technology has. Now there's so many podcasts. It's hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
There's so many podcasts. For anything really. I've been listening to a lot of Bill Burr, his podcast. I just by accident saw he had one that they also rerun on YouTube. So, that's a little fun. So I listen to his stuff sometimes in the morning when I'm having my coffee and reading the news.
Yeah. But since we've been doing this for like a year and change now, we've talked to some of the best and brightest in the creative industry: animators, cartoonists, illustrators, puppeteers, stop motion people, directors, and it's really all roads lead through the road of hard work. Right. So Mike will tell you any day of the week that there's no shortcuts in this business. And one of the things I love,
we should have named the podcast No Shortcuts. No Shortcuts.
I like that.
Right.
With a Z.
Right. Yeah.
Is that my favorite part of this is when we talk to people and ask them their origin story and ask how they got from the beginning to where they are now. And sometimes the stories are similar, but sometimes they all kind of match up with grit. That's always a byline that goes through everybody's thing.
You see this position? This position?
Yeah.
This is the position you must assume.
That's right.
10, 12, 14 hours a day, 6-7 days a week, if you're going to be a professional cartoonist.
That's right. And that's not for the weak, I got to tell you. There's a lot of people who think they want it. And when we talk to Tim, we can talk about that. There's a lot of people that think they want it, but they don't really want it. They don't.
I don't think. And the other thing is, it's hard to really know that until you are in that position of actually having to do it every day. As we talked, I think a little bit last week, and we've talked before, you go from the desire, the dream to do it, and then maybe you get a chance, and then you have to go through that barrier of drawing through what the stage of discomfort in which, when you are pre-professional, you would go, okay, now I'm going to go play tennis, I'm going to go for a run, I'm going to go play video games. Let's face it, most people drawing comics are not playing tennis, they're playing video games. They're not going for a run, they're going for a virtual run with their character through some 3D world. So, but you take a break because you got to that point like, oh man, I'm so tired, I don't want to sit here and draw fences in the background anymore. Why do I have to draw fences?
Right. And some of those things knock people out the box. Like I talk a lot with people about kind of, and maybe we could talk about this a little bit tonight, about the fan that is like in love with detail. Like detail is king. And I talk about, them having to draw every grommet on Captain America's boot in a modern Marvel comic. That means it's good.
But the average person will look at something that's very finished, very detailed, and they will say, as a compliment, that looks like a photograph. How did you do that? That looks real. Because to them, to the average person, if they could paint something, they would paint something, and they would want it to look like the thing, right? They would want it to look like very realistic, and they appreciate, because just in general, people appreciate craftsmanship and detail. You look at a car, what are you looking at? Oh man, look at you buy a nice suit. Oh, look at the way it's crafted, right? That's just a general thing. So very often if I was out painting and someone would come across me, that would be the thing that they take. Now, some people would be like, how dare they, these miscreants, these small-brained, literal-minded people, how dare they say that to me? But you just have to realize, as the average person, if you could paint a tree that looked like a tree,
that's the measure. That's the measure right there. Right. You transferred something from here to there, and that's a measure of skill to a lot of people.
And most of the most popular comic artists are people who are fairly detailed, have a fairly detailed finish. There's always people that they bring up, like Alex Toth or somebody who was really more of an artist. He was never really a very popular fan artist, like Neil Adams is very realistic, very detailed. There's a lot of people like that have a very detailed finish. Fans like that because it's, like Barry Smith, right? Very detailed, a lot of rendering. They like that. And most people would prefer that over something that was simpler, because they don't really have that's something that the artists tend to develop, the eye for that simplicity, right? You realize that actually to get to something simple is actually a very complicated process, right? To draw a human head with 5 lines, each one of those lines has to carry the weight of 100 lines. All the information, right? All the information that maybe somebody who had a more rendered style would have. So, and and again, it's like taste. Like I like Chinese food, or I might like Vietnamese food, or I like Mexican food, and somebody's like, "Oh, I could never eat that." I can't stand Mexican food, or I can't stand, and it's very personal.
And just to kind of like bring this full circle, is that there's always kind of a line in the sand with some fans of comics or illustration who don't like cartoonists.
Well, I mean? I was talking about that earlier this week on my Facebook. In general, I think that cartoony stuff is the most popular form of comics, especially in the comic strips, which is popular across culture and across the world. But in comic books, at least this particular version of the direct market, people do not like cartoony. They like blood. They like violence because that's real.
Right.
Wolverine's real. He's not a cartoon. Batman is real. Right? They don't want to see the 60s Batman. No, that's silly. They want to see the modern Batman, who's actually not even a detective anymore. He's just a mad, pissed off billionaire.
He's not
right?
the world's greatest detective
No,
anymore. He's just
yeah,
bad.
yeah. And I think that I posted some samples on my Facebook page of one of my first samples that got me my first job. And it was actually very cartoony stuff because I've always had that duality where I liked Chuck Jones and the Flintstones and the Warner Brothers and Disney and Mad Magazine, and I loved Mort Drucker. I loved Mad Magazine. But at the same time, or Jack Kirby, but at the same time, I loved Neil Adams.
Yeah.
And I loved John Buscema, and I loved Russ Heath, and people that were much more realistic. And I liked doing both. So my first samples that I took around, there was two. There was to the first Chicago Con, there was the Batman samples, and nobody, good, better luck next time, kid. Yeah. Or the cartoony stuff of this character I came up with, Trax Rover. People reacted to that. That's what got me the job assisting on that Robotech Defenders comic because it had robots, it had backgrounds, it showed my ability with perspective, and the cartooniness of the characters was not a negative thing. Where I think if I was showing it to an editor at Marvel and DC,
it'd be a negative.
Yeah, they'd be like, "Well, yeah, but we don't."
Right, we don't get down like that here. We don't serve. You want to hear a really bad joke? Here's my bad joke of the night. You ready? Comic Sans walks into a bar. The bartender says, "Hey, you can't come in here. We don't serve your type."
He'll be here all week, ladies and germs, all week.
Get it? All right.
Why does everybody hate Comic Sans? I mean, it's not a great typeface, but it's like this blistering hate for Comic Sans that I don't really. I mean, I've never used it.
Yeah.
But except I would put it on my wedding invitation. But other than that,
well, I think I think we should talk about style tonight. This should be a nice, good vein to go through our conversation. And
it's the most probably the most important vein for the young artist is style, right? All about style. What style? Is that a cool style? That's a cool style.
Yeah.
Is that a cool?
Yeah, is it
no,
cool?
That's not cool. Is that not cool? No, that's not cool. That's old school.
Yeah.
What makes old school?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
What is it like 5 years, then you're old? Right?
Yeah. We could totally get into that. But so let's wrap up our banter and start talking about Tim Fielder. So first off, I want to give love to our sponsors. You see the John up here. You know the world famous John. The good people at Graphicsly who create Clip Studio Paint. Yes, that Clip Studio Paint are sponsors of Pencil to Pencil. Almost everybody in this business uses Clip Studio Paint in some fashion. And also, I gave a shout out to our buddy John Morrow, who is a publisher in good standing at Tomorrow's Publishing, who produces Draw Magazine.
I just got an email from John. I think he's having another sale.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, go cop all of that. And like we said last episode, the Draw Magazine physical copies are on deep clearance, right? Not clearance, or
the physical. Yeah, we're clearing out all the physical copies, so get them all you can, because once they're gone, they will not be reprinted, and that includes the best of Draw Volume 1, 2, and 3. But they will always be available on in a digital format. And I'm working on a annual that will probably be out sometime. Will be out sometime next year. So we're going to go to an annual print format. which I would assume, like almost every book that John puts out now, will also probably be digital.
All right. Okay, so we're going to start to bring our man in. We have the fantastic illustrator, Afrofuturist, and digital innovator Tim Fielder with us tonight. You might have heard Tim's name besides him blowing up the book world with his new book that's making a lot of waves. He's also he's not the president, Mike Manley, but he's a member. Our good buddy Tim is always in the chat with all the pencil to pencils. He comes through for my coffee breaks. You know, he's part of the crew, and you know he's an innovator. And I love talking to people who are moving the needle. That's really one of my biggest things. And if our platform could do anything, is to showcase people that are doing stuff that nobody else is doing. So I think Tim is on the forefront of a lot of those things. I can't wait to talk to him. But what I would like to do first is share a little clip. And let's hope that everything doesn't shut off. If you saw in the crawl, Mike and I are in a storm warning. We've had crazy storms for the past month, so hopefully this won't murder us. Damn it! Hold on a second. I gotta prep this again. So give me 1 second, and then I'll get this together. Mike,
Yeah, you can see pictures on my Facebook.
Yeah,
that I posted just a little bit right before we went on. I took up the approaching storm. You could see the line going right. It just gone right past.
Yeah, it's crazy. And we had in our area, maybe 2 weeks ago, a week ago, we had, and Philly's not known for tornadoes, right, Mike?
It is now.
There were 7. They said there were 7 tornadoes that touched down.
Right.
And outside of Philadelphia's area. And it's pretty scary. So protect your neck. All right. I think I got it together now.
You got it. You've got it loaded.
I think so. Hold on a second. Yeah. All right, cool. So let's check this out. That's the way it went to the end. Stop it. Hold on.
I don't want to be forgotten. I want people to know I was here. My name is Tim Fielder. I am a visual Afrofuturist and graphic novelist. There's always been a black faces and black voices in comics in general, but more diverse voices are coming into being. Opportunities and technology and possibility have all converged. And it really is about being able to exercise the right to fulfill ambition, despite the color of your skin. Past is important, but because we live here in the present, it's about making your claim for where you are now. I would love to have a massive impact. And when you do a drawing, people all over the world see it. That's Black history, but it's also Black future.
Yo, how you get Microsoft, fam? Yo, let's welcome to the show our good buddy Tim Fielder. I can't wait to talk to him.
Are we rendering him?
It's storming here, guys. It's storming. It's storming. No, that's my iPhone. Yeah. Hey, guys. Thank you for having me on today. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jamar.
Oh yeah, man. Good to see you, brother.
Style. Wow, you guys like bringing it in, and Microsoft was interesting. Mm-hmm. Microsoft was very interesting. I had a ball doing it. We were under COVID restrictions while we were doing it, so I had to. So my shelf, which is the baddest thing in my studio, was totally everything was taken out of the room except for that, and the one table I had. So everything was in the living room. So they shot. We had to get tests and everything, and they came in and they shot it, and I was very proud to do it.
That's very cool. How did that come about, Tim? Like, we're going to start. I want your origin, but let's start from there, and then we can work our way back.
So this is I will, before I was talking for the audience, I was talking with Mike and Jamar, and I was telling them, use me as the cautionary tale, right? You would be amazed how much can happen from a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
You will be amazed what happens from a phone call and just putting yourself out there. So I was approached by them because the person who approached me just they knew what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? So that's how I've learned. Took about 40 years to get that process down. But hey, it did. It took about 40 years to get it down. But I understand now that so much opportunity comes from just showing up, making a phone call, not being afraid to hear no, hearing no and saying, no, I'm not going to accept that. I'm going to turn it into a yes, and just doing it anyway. That's what I found. And that's how Microsoft came about.
So, well, we can maybe start here. Thanks for that, Tim. Tim's been in the game for a while, right? And like, I think maybe you and I, Tim, are part of this new wave of overnight success that took over 20 something years, right? Because now there are people who go, oh, I got Tim's book out the Barnes and Noble. That's dope. Is this his first book?
No.
You know, or, oh, Jamar, I saw your thing. Did you just fall out the turnip off the turnip truck last night?
Right.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit about your entry point into the art world and where you came from and where you are now.
Right. So from Clarksdale, Mississippi, that's where I grew up. Where COVID is now presently ripping through the populace, unfortunately.
No.
Yeah. Hey, lots of fun. And I started out at the age of like 3 drawing regular comic characters. I had a character called Thunderstar, modeled loosely after Jim Kelly. And eventually, once my older brother came home from college, kind of had an interesting conversation that kind of brought to my attention that I was not purposefully showing Black culture in my work. And suddenly everything went black.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been stuck in that gear for about 40 years. And so because, and I thought, okay, well, this is cool. There'll be a place for me doing this. Mm-hmm. And there was, in certain ways, I actually ended up in my 20s, in the 80s. I came to New York, January 7th, 1987. I was at School of Visual Arts. I came to School of Visual Arts to study under Art Spiegelman. That was on purpose, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But he had left the year before.
Wow.
So I ended up studying under Paul Karasik and Mark Newgarden, some of his proteges. Paul is the big time teacher at Center for Cartoon Studies in Vermont, and he did this one of my favorite Mazzucchelli books, the Paul Auster thing, City of Glass. Great book.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Mark Newgarden, Pee Wee's Playhouse, that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's always doing some kind of crazy, kooky book. And I was a real butthead at SVA, but I learned so much in that one semester I went, and then I started working in editorial cartooning as a freelance editorial cartoonist for the Village Voice.
Okay, yeah.
And so the odd thing is, so in '87, I was in college. I was doing freelance editorial work on the Florian Bachelada, who used to work with Raw magazine along with Spiegelman. And so my thing is, I was going to be the Black alternative cartoonist. That's what I was going to be. Okay. And I kind of did that a little bit, and did a lot of flyers for the Black Rock Coalition. The whole Living Color thing, did all that stuff for a good while. And the interesting thing is, in the 80s, when I was kind of coming along, like I know Andre Leroy Davis, who does a lot of stuff for the Source. I never got into the Source, but I was doing a lot of the early hip hop work in The Voice. A lot of Queen Latifah, a lot of Eric B. and Rakim, and I'm not even, that's just what I was around. So
right.
So I did that. And so I was thinking I was going to do alternative cartooning because that was a thing at the time. Because I did my brief one job stint at Screw Magazine. Everybody got to do at least one Screw Magazine, right? And ended up running into my good friend Floyd Hughes, Black Brit expat, who's one of my great friends and has been in the cartooning industry for a gazillion years, but has been at Pratt University teaching for a quarter century, if that could be believed. And now he does most of Spike Lee's storyboards.
Oh, very cool.
So he got me my first contact with Joyce Bradner, Harvey Picard's widow. And I was working on a project for Eclipse Comics called Children of War. And that is how I made my entry into the comic book industry. And it was cool. It was good. I had a lot of fun. Book wasn't published, but I eventually would segue into Marvel Comics. I didn't, with the whole, Milestones crew, I never was fortunate enough to get into that. I got in through the Brits. So my first job was by a British editor, and he brought me on Conan magazine, and I did pinups, painted, ink wash paintings and stuff, and it was a lot of fun. And then eventually, around the early 90s, I guess about 93, 94, Floyd gave me a tip. One of the jobs had opened up, and I was working for Marvel Music. And at that time, this was in the painted era. So you had people like Alex Ross had just hit the scene, right? Because all of us are contemporaries. That's, I'm old, And hey, it's true. It's true. So everybody was doing painted comics, and that's what I was doing. So in my home studio, I was doing this project called Black Metropolis, which is this footy. I'm into the bande dessinée. That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be Mobius, Inky Bilal. Those are the guys who I grew up reading and loving. Beto Harlan. I love all that stuff. Yeah. But I wanted to do that with Black characters. And eventually I got on at Marvel Music on the Mort Todd and did that. I did 63-page fully painted and gouache graphic novel called Dr. Dre, Man with a Cold, Cold Heart. Mort gave me a 1-paragraph treatment, and I expanded it into, a script of 63 pages, and we did it. And Dre apparently broke parole, and he was under house arrest. He broke parole from what we heard, and the book never came out. This was 94.
So the book didn't come out because he was on parole, or he broke parole?
Yes. And then after that, you remember shortly thereafter, Marvel declared bankruptcy.
Well, I remember that. I don't remember. Dre breaking parole specifically, but I think it's really.
Told me.
Yeah,
that's what they told me. So that book still sits in a portfolio case. Is now shown in my which Black Metropolis is now my career retrospective show that I show pages from. People like, yo, that looks like Dr. Dre. I'm like, that is Dr. Dre, So one day it'll get published. But by the time the mid 90s, 96, 97 happened, as Mike, as you well remember, we had people jumping off buildings. I'll never forget George Carragon. That was crazy. Mark Neverlow, who was at Vertigo, had taken an interest in my Lou Stathis, excuse me. He took an interest in Maddie's Rocket, the project I would eventually end up doing on my own, self-published through my company. But he was interested in the early version, and then he had a brain aneurysm. So we had people dying because people were under so much pressure. And eventually, you know, like a lot of people, you had to make a decision. You know, I had children at the time. So it was either, okay, do you stay in this comic book industry where there are no jobs? My last job, I'll never forget, called Forbidden Zone. Anybody here remember Forbidden Zone?
You're tagging the chat room. See what happens.
Yeah. Forbidden Zone was this soft porn comic.
By who? Who published it?
This was it? I don't think it was my man from it wasn't my man from Penthouse. It wasn't
Bob Guccione.
It could have been, but the editor was Horatio Weisfeld, good guy. And
was that Penthouse Comics? Remember?
No. Penthouse
Comics
was one
line.
thing. That was Carragon.
Okay.
Yeah.
But no, Forbidden Zone was this kind of watered down version.
Okay.
Penthouse Comics. And I did that, and I did breakdowns for Richard Corbin.
Okay.
One of the great joys of my life, and Richard did two things that altered the course of my life. Hey, thank you, Jerry Kraft, who always said he's interfering again, people. Anyway, but what happened was Richard Corbin is one of the greatest, he passed away, unfortunately, a year or so ago. One of the greatest illustrators in the world. Forget comic book artists. Arguably did the greatest Punisher story that's ever done. It was brilliant. Mm-hmm. And he did two things. I did breakdowns for him. It had all of the raunchy stuff in there. Richard went on to change everything I did. One of the great joys of my life, because it was like, people were like, man, aren't you offended by that? I was like, my breakdowns were changed by Richard Corbin. I loved it. Loved it. And I had such a fun time working with him because that was when I went completely digital. I'd gone digital around 97. By 99, it was complete. I haven't drawn on paper in decades. I just do everything digital with Wacom tablets, Photoshop. At the time, Corel Painter or Fractal Design Painter. That's what I used.
It used to come in a little can of paint.
Great packaging. Packaging.
I was a year or two ago. I actually finally threw it out. I had that can of paint sitting over in the corner there forever.
Great packaging. So I did that. And as something you said, Jamar, about trying to innovate. Mm-hmm. Innovation sucks sometimes, man. Because you're constantly innovating without doing what's in the industry.
Right.
So that sucked. But the good thing about doing that is that it actually made me ready for the game industry. Okay. So in 99, I made the transition to work with Ubisoft Entertainment on Batman Vengeance, which was based on the Bruce Timm cartoons. And I know, Mike, you have some experience with that. That was a really interesting experience. I remember once I was talking with, I think his name was Reed Schneider at the time. Because Ubisoft had set up a division in New York. So they're based out of France, but then they had a Canadian division, so they set up a New York division. So I was hired there because I was teaching 3D animation at the time. I've been doing really bad 3D animation since the 90s. So that's what I've always done. I've always incorporated new technologies into my work. And it got me to the point where I could... Around 99, 2000, just before 9/11, I was official in the gaming industry. And so I did that for a few years until I had to get out. And I taught for many years, teaching people how to do work in digital technology and raising my kids. My babies, they're not babies anymore. They're all of them in their 20s now.
So let me ask a couple of questions, Tim. We can maybe talk about the digital chasm between, let's just say, the person on the street and somebody who has access to like high-end tech. Like I remember back to I was an early adopter because I had like a Windows 321 computer in my apartment, right? Where other people had nothing, right? So when you talk about like early Photoshop, like in like Corel, and I remember Painter would crash your computer every time you used it. How did you? Well, I guess like how did you get your hands on that stuff, or how did you get in that space where you were trying to test these new things and had the
Right,
wherewithal to do it?
Sobering question.
Yeah.
And I'll deliver a sobering answer. My first experience doing illustration on a computer was on Mac Paint in 1985
with the claw mouse.
All I know is my hand was hurting. So I did it. I drew this illustration. I knew immediately, oh my God, this is it. And the department people saw what I was doing. It was at Jackson State University in Mississippi. And they saw it, and there were some issues. They said, you can't use a computer anymore. I said, why not? I'm paying my tuition. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
They said, you might break it. So
you're using too much computery. You're using too much computer.
That's right.
So that's what it was. So, I stopped working with it until I went back to it in 96, 97. So it would be another 10 years before I got heavy into it, because I should have really done the Dre graphic novel in the computer, because I was good enough to do it at that time. But no, I wanted to feel the paint. I felt it all right when I felt like my arms were about to fall off, because you do a gouache is a very unforgiving medium if you're not careful.
Yeah.
It can mess you up. But I did it. And once I did that, everything's digital, because I can do something that looks virtually the same as a regular painted comic, but in digital. And now I have the advantage of using photography like Kirby. I can do 3D models, which I've been doing for 20 something plus years. So I have the ability and the skill set, I guess I should say, to be able to employ all of those things. And it's nice. It's nice to be able to do it. My issue was finishing stuff.
Okay.
And that's what's happened over the last, I guess, since you and I reconnected, a lot of that type of stuff. That's what my thing is all about finishing now. Finish everything.
Yeah, you got to finish.
So the issue was not finishing, or the difficulty in finishing the current project, or the idea?
No, never a shortage of ideas. That was never an issue. Because like I said, a lot of people, I knew what was going on. A lot of folks had to make a decision whether they were going to stay in the industry in the late 90s or get out. Like one of my favorite cartoonists, I love this guy, is Darwin Cook.
Yeah.
So he was in it, then he was out of it for a long period of time, and then he came back into it. But when he came back into it, he had multiple decades of experience from other field, which informed his work.
Right.
And that's why you have the Parker series, which is like his masterwork to me. But so that's what happened, and without going too deeply into it, I had a very interesting domestic life. And so that it informs my work to this day.
Well, what I find really cool about you, Tim, and we, again, I don't have to like go into everybody's how I met them story, but what I remember when like we actually sat down and talked, your whole lane was digital illustration.
Yeah. And
you were talking about, I think you were talking to, I think it was at New York or something, and you were just talking to the guys at Wacom, and you got some good news, and I was just like, yo, that's really hot. But I know that there used to be a big learning curve where the stuff that's accessible now was not so accessible then, right? So you almost had to be kind of like a mountaineer, like you had to put on this pack and climb up the hill to use this stuff, while people like just looked at you from the safety of the ground.
Well, also too, at that time in the business, like especially in comics, was like the last of the major publishers to switch over to using digital. Right? They were still for a very, very long time. In fact, I got my first computer in '94, my first Power Mac, and my first MacBook. The laptop, which I actually still have and still runs.
Yeah.
But when I bought it, most of the other cartoonists I knew did not have a computer.
Yeah.
Because you could have it, but you didn't really use it for your job yet. Nobody was really sending emails. People were still sending faxes for a good part of the 90s, things like that. So it's like, in your case, if you're working in video games or you're working in these other industries, they have already moved on or were built from the ground up. I'm sure video games are built from the ground up. Everybody using a computer, right?
It's just what it was, man.
Yeah.
For me, and the thing is, in the gaming industry, or even just in the regular standard animation industry, that was just such a part. That's how you survived. One of the things that I never learned Maya, never learned it, right? And it kept me out of certain jobs that I could have gotten because I learned 3ds Max, and to this day I still use that software. Back then it was a real career defining type of decision, but now, it doesn't matter.
For a long time, that you're right. For a long time, it's like you went to school and you learned this program, or you learned that, oh shit, I chose the wrong program. And it takes you a while to learn. Like Maya is not easy to learn. I remember them teaching in the beginning. It took you months just to learn the interface, right?
And yeah, man, you're right. And of course now,
or Lightwave, people were learning Lightwave,
Autodesk, Maya. First it was 3D Studio, then it became Maya, 3ds Max,
right?
And then it was Maya, and there were all kinds of other 3D programs that are still around, like Houdini, things like that. And so, yeah, Jamar, I got a little distracted there with the tech for a while, and it was cool. But it was not conducive. I was out of the comic book industry. I never forget the last conversation I had. Oh, hey, you did not waste 2 years in Lightwave. You did not. You did not. Lightwave is still a viable program. So, for example, like Blender is the thing now. Why?
Right. Yeah, everybody's using Blender. Yeah.
It's because it's free. I probably will never learn Blender because Max, I know it. And I'm not trying to. I remember I tried on 3 separate occasions to get work for Blue Sky. The first time, they kept my portfolio for over a year. I was kind of saying, yeah, should I come back out? Because at that time, they were in upstate New York. I was like, hey, should I, come get my portfolio? Oh, Tim, if you could just hold on to the portfolio, let us hold on to it, right? And I found out I was in what's called the maybe pile.
Oh, yeah.
They might hire you. Right. So I wanted to be either a story guy or a concept designer for game design. And a lot of that stuff is who and timing. But the last time I tried it, I was going to be a storyboard artist. But I wanted to show them that I knew how to do completely digital storyboards. So I went into Blue Sky thinking, my God, I'm so ready for this job. Hire me now. And I went in there with my stuff on computer, everything set up, and they were still drawing on paper. And I was amazed because I was like, well, how are you guys doing your animatics, right? Which were crucial. This is like 2008. And,
wow.
They had a guy around the corner. None of them knew how to use After Effects. So they had a guy around the corner that they would give the files to. And that's when I knew, okay, my time is done. So I went back to school, was there for about 2 years at NYU, and went into animation doing motion graphics, bad animation, by the way. And eventually would go on to going by Jerry's Black Comic Book Day, which we used to call it. Now it's the Schaumburg Black Comic Book Festival. And I went to the second one, the first one that was at the Schaumburg, and I saw all these folks. Some I knew, like N. Stephen Harris, who I knew from back in like 1992. And it looked like Black comics were back again. And I would move, I guess, I started working with Alex Simmons again, who used to teach at the Children's Art Carnival, where the whole Milestones group was from that I taught at for like 94 to 95 or something like that, 92 to 94, somewhere around there. And yeah, it was an interesting experience. And now I always felt like over the decades that I was ahead of everything, but now I finally feel like the world is caught up. And that's with that guy there, Infinite.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about Infinitum in a second because there's already some chatter in the chat room who want to ask a question. But I want to hold on to this digital thing for a second because I think it's understated to say how like the culture has shifted so much. Like I still have a day job at a college where this time of year all the phone calls and the emails from parents are, well, what kind of computer do I need for my kid? He needs a laptop, right? What programs do you have for this? It's a given that your kids know how to do this stuff.
Right.
And even, Mike and I have conversations a lot about the new era of art school, where is it okay to be in a painting class, but you're on a Apple
tablet.
Apple tablet, like an iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil versus actually mixing paint?
Well, I'll put it this way. I got my tablet here, right?
Right.
I have, like I said, I have the 28-inch Surface Studio Pro. I have the Cintiq 32, Cintiq Pro from Wacom. I use all digital tablets. They have to be big because I can't see that well. I have a 22 Cintiq HD for the road. I used to try to use it, but I just can't see anymore. It's like, you guys got glasses? That's because you're intelligent. Me, I don't have glasses yet, so I need to go get them, right? But
wait, you haul a 22 around on the road? That's crazy.
Oh no. I hauled my 32 around. I have a case, and people in the neighborhood say, "Are you a musician?" Because they think I'm a DJ. I'm like, no, man. No, I'm an artist, right? But I couldn't do that anymore because it was, I'm 55, almost 55 years old. That's not breaking me down, man.
Yeah.
So I got a 22 that I could put in the side pouch. So that's much more manageable for me now for the road. But this is what I'll say about digital tech and style. You remember that movie? And I tell my students this sometimes. Remember that movie? What's the one with Denzel? King Kong got nothing on me. You remember that?
Training Day.
And he was telling the Ethan Hawke character, you better learn that Spanish because it'll save your life. You should know two things. You should understand art fundamentals. You should understand perspective. You should understand shading, contrast, things like that. Form, line, shape, all that stuff, right? Values, hues. You should understand that stuff. But now you have to know, if you're going to be a 2D artist, you must know Photoshop. At least Photoshop. That's the bottom standard. Yes, I know people hate paying the subscription. Who cares? Buy it because you have no choice. Now, you can also rock with Clip Studio Paint. You can. But I find that it works for me to use both.
Right.
If you're going to do 2D, if you're going to do 3D, you should be focused right now on Blender. And after Blender, you had damn well better make sure you get on Unreal Engine. You can learn Unity as well, but Unreal Engine is the wave of the future, not only for animation, for film projects. The Mandalorian, that's all Unreal from Epic Games. Wow. But it's going to affect and change and alter the course of comics. I'm telling you, it's coming. It's already there, but it's going to dramatically change and alter what I do. My book, Maddie's Rocket, where is it? Right there. This one here. All of the environments, 3D. But I use a paint over technique that's been in use in the video game industry for decades. That's why I learned how to do it. I'm like, oh my God, if I get these basic primitives, I can paint over them. On the Batman Vengeance game. That's why I learned that. Back in 1999. Oh my God. So learn it and understand it. Now, style. I'm an old head. I just got the Kenneth book. Where is it? Here. I can't
Which one? Let me see it. Is it?
I got it's the big one. Where's my Kniff book? Doggone it! I just got it. Hold on.
Mike's like King Kniff around here, so let's see what you got. Pull it out, Tim. Let's see it.
Okay, hold on. Well, so I got my Kirby books. I got my Eisner books. Right. I got my I learned this from you guys.
Oh,
oh my God. It's incredible. Incredible.
And he's right out of the Kniff school.
Dude. He's incredible.
Yeah.
Who else I got here? I got and of course, I got to do this because I'm kind of ridiculous. This is my deluxe Ralph McQuarrie.
Yeah.
This is his personal work. I love it. And of course, I got about five or six Ross books, and I'm now working on Bill Stout, who is one of the great unsung concept designers that worked on Conan the Barbarian, and just really incredible stuff. And of course, Sid Mead and Ron Cobb, those are old heads. I love them too.
I love show and tell here.
I'm sorry. That was the world I came from. That's the world I came from. That's what I wanted to do. I did it. I did a bunch of different things, but eventually, as you get older, you have to focus. Mm-hmm. And so that leads me to style. The comic book industry is exactly as Mike said. They like their violence. They like their Alex Raymond influenced art. That's the reality. And now it's getting influenced by anime a lot. That's a reality.
That's like default now.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but I there's something I have to say about it being a default. In the graphic novel industry, none, Neil Adams, Michael Golden, who I love, Image Comics wouldn't exist without him. All of those brilliant artists, Mobius, Inky Bilal, Philippe Drouillet, it goes on and on. My editors don't have a clue as to who those people are. They don't know. And here's the hard part. They don't care. Why? The Dogman sells millions of copies. Millions. Jeff Kinney's work, brilliant cartoonist, millions. Diary of a Wimpy Kid. You know what I mean? He's whipping his way. He's just, he's doing what he got to do. Rainer Telgemeier. That stuff it's a really simple style, so clever. It doesn't even matter anymore. All you can do is do the work that you do great stories. You cannot underestimate the importance of how to really handle panel-to-panel continuity, how much it applies. It still does, I believe. But the most important to me, the thing to me, and it's like I hear a lot of guys say, man, I'm resentful of the anime thing that's happening. I'm like, yeah, but
they've been resentful of that for like 30 years.
Sure. But let me say this, though. Styles come and go. I'm not worried about that. My concern is when I do my work, am I doing my work to the best of my abilities? Does my work show heart? You dig what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to do. Because, not everything is for everyone.
Right. And that's really a thing. It's kind of like a war of attrition that's happening. And it's more like, really what this feels like to me is that there are a bunch of people who are trying to turn the heads of comic book aficionados, and this started the program talking about cartoonists, and maybe somebody who bridged that gap was Jeff Smith with Bone, because everybody loves Bone.
There he is, right there.
Everybody loves Bone. But then, Captain Underpants happened, and people were like, well, hold on. You know what I mean? And I think
the business is also in a very, very different spot than 25 years ago when he started Bone, because if he tried to do Bone now in the direct market, the reason why Bone, a lot of those things like Ninja Turtles or whatever became popular is because they didn't sell very well in the beginning. The retailers then could put them on the wall and sell those early issues for a lot of money, which, you know, money gets oh, hey, I've got that old issue of Bone, you know. You also had two distributers. You had Capital City.
Yeah, Titan.
Right. You had a lot of different things. Now, a guy or a gal who's producing something like Bone might skip the direct market altogether, like Diary of a Wimpy Kid or whatever, and go directly to Hufflin Mifflin, you know, or Scholastic.
Hold on. Why we even got to use that example? Let's go to Jeff. Jeff just made over $250,000 on Kickstarter for Tukey.
Right.
You know, so this is what I say to that. I'm a broken record. I apologize, Jamar. Just finish. Mm-hmm. Because nobody's going to care anyway. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to like, oh, you know, your stuff is not this. It's not sexy, or it's not, you know, we need more of this. It's like Paris Cullins. God bless him. It's the person who got me straight. But I'll never forget, it was 2013. I had just kind of formally gotten back in the comic book industry. And Alex Simmons, while I did his Blackjack graphic novel, asked me to watch his table. And I watched his table for 3 days. And I sat there and I sat and watched Paris Cullins put on a clinic of how you survive and promote and do your comics. I saw this dude. He come in, first of all, the most boring man in comics, Paris Cullins. He has absolutely nothing to say. Words just won't come out of his mouth. I'm obviously joking, folks. Paris Cullins is a waterfall of information and noise, and he's a wonderful person. This guy, everybody who walked up to his table, he was like a salesman. Mm-hmm. And I watched this guy. I was so nervous. I watched this guy work for 3 straight days. His energy level never went down. Mm-hmm. It was always up. If someone came to him and say, hey, look, I want to do a commission, he was on it. So he would go home from the convention that night, do the commissions, bring them back finished the next day or the day after, and he kept this up. And I looked at it. I remember because it was around the time I was thinking, well, okay, I'm back in this, but what's happening? And I remember we were walking to Javits, where they hold the New York Comic Con. Mm-hmm. And I said, man, what's going on? And this is the thing where I not a quibble, but more I say to my answer to what's happening in the industry with the trade industry, $27 billion, and the comic book industry, $1 billion. He said, Tim, there's something for everybody. There's an audience for every project. Not so much there's a project for the audience. He says you can find an audience for any project in this day and age, all due to the internet, broadband. That's what is, think about it. What's the, I'm sorry, because I'm drawing a blank. One of my favorite strips is it got a Netflix deal. Lore Olympus. Mm-hmm. I know you know Lore Olympus, Mike, with all those anime heads you teach, right? It's like what's the name of the site it's on? I can't believe I'm drawing a blank.
Wait,
it's on Webtoons.
Webtoons,
yeah,
right.
It's so I feel incredibly positive now. I think there's so many venues and opportunities. I mean, heck, on the New York Times, they were talking. There was a story just the other day talking about comics through email or something like that. I love it. I love the fact that someone like me, who did those kind of black science fiction comics, now known as Afrofuturism, there's a place for me when there was absolutely not back in the day. Definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
And back then I had dreadlocks like Jamar's, lots of locks.
A fountain of dreadlocks.
I had a fountain. Yeah.
I love it. And maybe we could touch on the rise of Afrofuturism.
Okay.
Because I know that this has been a lane you've been in for a while, and there's a lot of people. There's not a lot, but there's a lot of very loud voices in that camp who are trying to, like I say all the time, move the needle. But people are just starting to pay attention.
Yes.
To what's happening.
Yes.
I don't want to throw a lot of names around tonight because we're talking about you, Tim.
Oh no, throw the names around, man. Don't worry, I'll make sure I pop my name in from the here to there.
Well, just like to, maybe even start at Octavia Butler and just move backwards from there. You know what I mean? Like, you could talk about John Jennings and Damian Duffy, yourself, Stacey Robinson. Like all you guys are doing like amazing work, and I think the success of that Lovecraft Country show on HBO, where people were like, yo, this is hot, and this is kind of like what's going on. And maybe I'll do a really, really blanket, like base version of what Afrofuturism is to the layman. It's if you looked at Star Trek back in the day and you went, how come did the black people not make it? Did we not make it to the future? Is your hero the only black person left in space or on the planet or anywhere? What's that about? Where are our stories? Do we make it? It's kind of like the beginning of the study of what our future holds for us. And Tim, I'm sure you could elaborate on that.
Yeah. It's like one of my favorite cartoonists ever is Howard Chaykin.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm weird. So my favorite stuff that Chaykin did was like his painted graphic novels, Empire, Swords of Heaven, Flowers of Hell. Most people don't even remember that. What would rain pee from the sky, acid. That stuff, that messed me up in the 70s. Because at the 70s, how did we get our comics? We got our comics, right? Because Junior Food Mart did stop selling comics around 79, right? So the only way that's for you guys know, that's the equivalent of 7-Eleven back in the 70s, right? So the only way we could get comics is we'd have to go with my mom on Tupperware sales. The Tupperware lady is the brightest idea. It's a blah, blah, right? That's why I would go with her to help her with the Tupperware part so we could go to the Junior Food Mart in another town to get our comics. That was the only way we could keep up.
It was a trek, yeah.
Right. Or we would order from Bud Plant, who was based in San Francisco. And we used to drive that man crazy because we would be ordering from San Francisco, Star Reach, all that stuff, stuff Gene Day, my favorite stuff with Andromeda, with Paul Ricochet, who did the greatest independent comic single story ever produced, Arthur C. Clarke's Exile of the Eons, to this day, brilliant. So you might ask, what in the world does this have to do with black comics, Afrofuturist? Those were all big, epic scale things, but we never saw ourselves in it. At least in film media, you had a Lando Calrissian, and you had a Nichelle Nichols. And yes, I know the black guy got killed just as he got away from the zombies in Night of the Living Dead, and Ernie Hudson died in Leviathan just before the credits rolled. I know that screwed me up too. It messed me up, but at least I had a template to know what to work from. In comics, however, Luke Cage, I like the character, but he couldn't just be a hero. He had to be a hero for hire. Right? He had to be a hero for hire. That type of stuff that I saw. But I was never a straight superhero comic book artist. I was science fiction. And in the kind of fully rendered metal hurlant, heavy metal magazine world, there was literally, from my understanding, from what I know, other than Ed Davis, who worked a world apart in Heavy Metal magazine back in the 70s, there was no representation of people of color. Zero. And so I grew up in that space trying to do that work in the 80s, moving into the 90s. Even when I was in the game design industry, I was trying to do it. Now, there are contemporaries, like I mentioned Machindo, because it's appropriate to mention him.
No,
you know, yeah, he's one of the pioneers of the form of Afrofuturism. That's a contemporary that I have a tremendous amount of respect for. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, and visual Afrofuturism is the distinction I make. So, Octavia Butler, Sam Delaney, Stephen Barnes, those are prose-based Afrofuturists.
Mm-hmm.
They write stories, great stories, right? But when you begin to add a visual, that's a bit more dangerous, particularly when you're dealing with sequential narratives. That's problematic. I never forget the what was that name of that graphic novel company based in Lower Manhattan? I forget the name of it. But I was in the email exchange and I was trying to pump Black Metropolis to him, which was a Yoruba story told in this high-tech environment. He said, well, Black people don't read comics, right?
Well, Black people have always read comics.
I know that.
Yeah.
He was saying,
what's fun? Yeah, I had this when I first moved into this house.
Right.
I had a cable guy come over
Mm-hmm.
to install the cable. Older black guy. When he saw that I did comics, oh man, he was telling about how he used to read comics in the 50s. He used to read Captain America and the EC stuff, and he and his buddies used to trade comics back and forth with each other. I think the thing, going back to what you're talking about, the thing with Luke Cage, that was them trying to do Jim Kelly.
It's very blaxploitation based.
Right, yeah, because they go, well, that's because comics was always an imitation business. It never invented anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's always
sort of,
it's because the original comic books came out of comic strips, pre comic strips. And then as soon as they came up with something that would be like Superman, then everybody else imitated it. Captain Marvel, right? And comics all the way through the 50s, whatever became popular, cowboys, there's a million cowboy comics. There's a million alien science fiction comics. So I think with Marvel and DC, they looked at the blaxploitation stuff and the kung fu stuff, and they said, oh, we'll make a comic.
Okay, so I'm going to push back a little bit. So Master Race, Krickstein's work, right? That was innovative within the medium of comics. Eisner. So I hear what you're saying. I disagree with that, and it's just, for me, comics. You come into the Escher castle, and well, this is my daughter, and this is my son, and this is my wife. Oh, who's that shaking in the corner? Oh, that is my mutant stepchild. Comics, right? It disrespected medium, no doubt. But I think, which is why it's a joy to be back in comics now, is that when you mention Marvel and DC, yeah, they were the standard bearers and they imitated a lot of stuff. No question about that. No question about that. But I think comics has always been that scrappy medium that was able to define itself. Steranko, pulls from film. He does his thing. He gets out. Then Gulacy takes it. He runs with it a little while. Or like you're doing the Phantom. One of my favorite cartoonists ever, Don Newton. Man was brilliant. Brilliant. And my favorite work he ever did, the Phantom. Right? Because he was able to take direct influences, and embed it within its work. I think comics for me have always been that. It's always been that type of thing. What I'm interested in seeing now which again, the finishing part, which I had to work toward. Now I finish. I'm grateful for that. Is I want to continue to push the medium forward, but it's about building legacy now. So let's say Maddie's Rocket, right? That's the thing. I had literally trying to finish it this month so that I can go out to a publisher so it can come out. Because now I want to build that I have 3 episodes of Maddie's Rocket laid out. And for the first time, Mike, I hope you'll be proud of me. I actually have 4 interns that are starting with me tomorrow.
Wow.
Literally tomorrow. Because I'm recognizing I had to get past that macho stage of, oh, I'm going to do everything myself. It's like, no, you're going to use interns. So I have interns helping me, designers helping me with multiple books. And that's why it took me a while to get here, but that's what I'm doing because I believe that there is hope in this medium. The fear, for sure, but there's hope in it. Of course, I'm not totally limited because there's a lot of stuff happening in the film space with, my manager at Herbalt Media. There are announcements that are coming. Can't talk about them yet, but they're coming. But I like being able to diversify my activities. Mm-hmm. And as a result of doing that, it's allowing me, I think, this is just my opinion, to be a better comic book artist. Mm-hmm. Funny book guy. I think I'm better at it. Afrofuturism is just simply the ability to be able to see oneself into the future. And
as a Black person, Black creator, Black
both, man.
Yeah.
Both, man. All of it. It's just for me, I'm just so happy to be in a position where I can do the type of story I want to do, not have to be a total victim to editorial in the process. I can just do what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. There's an audience for it. Like Lovecraft Country. I love Lovecraft Country. Not because I understood it, because it was just simply done. It was insane. That show was insane, right? Mm-hmm. And it gives room for other projects to come into being. It's something my twin brother and I were saying. What's the difference between now, 2020, and 2000 or 1990? Technology has so democratized access to resources, audience, distribution. All bets are off. So I now feel that a person could do a strip that looks like Judge Parker. And if the story is fly and it's given in the right medium, it can work. That's what I believe. I believe that now. It's just a matter of whether or not the creators have the courage to start and finish that material.
So then you could have Asian futurism and Spanish futurism or
yes.
Whatever.
And it can look like Russ Heath's work. It can look like that. It's just that you got to be dope with your storytelling. You got to have the ability to be able to stretch. I mean, look, one of the baddest cartoonists on the planet, Alison Bechdel, right? Her style is very much a product of the kind of independent comic book industry, mm-hmm. right? That kind of alternative. And, she cultivated her own audience over time. She tells her story, and that's it. All you have to do is like Paris Cullins. There's an audience for every project. That just is. And for me right now, the next 5 to 10 years are going to be very interesting. I intend to bust my behind getting a ton of Afrofuturist and general storytelling concepts out there into the public. That's what I want to be doing.
Tim, one of our best buds, Eternity Forever, asks, where's the future of Afrofuturism now? Who's on the cusp of moving it forward, Tim Fielder?
Oh, my God. Well, of course, I'm going to say I feel like I'm always there, and it's a very uncomfortable position because you don't know how things are going to ride. But the person who I'm very, very excited about in the comic medium, believe it or not, is Micheline Hess.
Oh, Micheline's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and people are like, well, Micheline Hess, didn't she do that Overland comic? Like, yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this sister. God, do I have it here? Oh my God, do I have it? She did this accordion comic. I think it was called Snow Dog. It was an accordion comic, handmade about 3-4 years ago. But then she started working in VR, man. Right? Like, you guys familiar with Worm World Saga by Daniel Liskay?
No.
Just look his stuff up, wormworldsaga.com. This guy has been working on this thing for 10 years, fully painted, all digital, using ZBrush, Photoshop. I'm just saying, there's a world out there that's developing that has its own audience. And it's webtoons, but it's much broader than that. And I think, particularly for the kind of fully rendered work that I do, you know, there's a point where, you know, I feel like, oh God, is this gonna work? The book just came out. Yeah, that's right. Worm World is amazing. I just wanna. There's opportunity out there. And I'm not even just talking about storytelling opportunities or artistic opportunities. There's even opportunities out there, just cold hard cash, money. That's how big this thing is. And I'm going to say this. It's going to sound really weird. So they just passed a $1.5 or $1.2 trillion infrastructure plan, right? Contained within that is broadband. That broadband is designed to be in rural areas and urban areas. That's going to change everything. That's
so you're going to have rural futurism? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, you're going to have a deluge of content from people who never would have had the opportunity.
People are just curious and say, I'm wondering if that I can get this.
It's coming. It's already here, but it's really going to get more and more ridiculous over the next 5 years, I believe.
Now, do you to touch into that? Would you say you're mostly an American audience, or are you getting some international interest?
Yeah, that's interesting. There's been a lot of, first of all, critically, I can't complain. And Infinitum has gotten ridiculous reviews, you know, kind of sad. Some of them brought me to tears, you know, that type of thing, you know. And what is a big, you know, this is kind of a misnomer. Well, not a misnomer. It's kind of a weird phrase. But when I hear someone says that, you know, Infinitum is like Afrofuturism, but as if Alex Ross painted it, hey, what more can you say to that? You know what I mean? That made me feel really good. But outside of that, getting a ton of response, obviously, from people in the Black community, people of color. But because of the way the book looks, it's fully painted, it's fully rendered, it's done like a picture book, I'm starting to get a lot of adults beginning to read it. Now, thus far now, we're beginning to make the push into the European region. Because, in my opinion, yeah, Infinitum's doing all right here in the States. But, you know, as you say, you got to find your audience. And people can be fickle. But I believe, I mean, hey, look at this. I think Infinitum can appeal to the same people that read Valerian. Because it falls very comfortably in that vein. It's fully rendered. It's not so far outside of the vein of a Jeff Darrow. It's like that. And so that's what the push is. Now, absolutely, things have been a little weird with the COVID. I think we could agree COVID has done some very, very interesting things, which is why people see me all the time talking, being interviewed. And I thank you guys again for having me on here today, because my job, yeah, I got to draw the book, I got to write it, but then I got to go sell it. So Paris, that example, I mean, and I was always an energetic teacher, very energetic. I take that same philosophy. So I will be promoting Infinitum till I croak, hopefully 40 years from now.
Well, the reason I asked that, because when you mention people like Mobius, he you know, that stuff when heavy metal started becoming available here just was like a bomb that exploded in the imaginations, especially. I was like 15, right? And he still today influences all these new generations of kids that he's been dead like 10 years, but all these kids coming in are still influenced by him, and there's something about that work that crosses all cultures, right? So I'm wondering if, in a way, you being influenced by that is going back to influence the root culture.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because it's the same with anime. Like, you had the anime that we saw as kids, like Kimba and Astro Ball, all
Star
that stuff,
Blazers,
right?
all that. Yeah.
Right, all that stuff. I was seeing, you know, in the 60s when I was a little kid. Right. And now you have, which in turn was influenced, those guys are influenced by the American cartoons.
Right.
And the Disney stuff and the stuff that the troops brought over during the occupation. So you see our influence reflected through their culture, affecting all the kids here, generations on now, right? So you keep having this. The wave comes over, the wave goes back, and when it goes back, it takes something from our side back to that side, which then is good, because now there's this whole sort of like Belgium anime merge style. You see a lot of these productions being done.
Those guys who did great at things stuff.
There's a lot of artists in Europe that are very influenced now and are doing these co-productions with Japan, which is coming over here, which will go back again. So do you see that Afrofuturism, and what do you think Afrofuturism, what is the flavor it might carry back? Because Mobius' stuff has a flavor. It wasn't like anything else you saw. You could see things in our culture reflected in it. You know, like my favorite Mobius story is The Long Tomorrow.
Yeah, Dan O'Bannon.
Right, yeah, I love that because it's got the film noir, but then it's got Mobius. Yeah. That's where Blade Runner came from. Right? So you could see how, again, our culture going over affects that culture, comes back over here, brings something. Now it's going back over. So what do you think Afrofuturism might carry back to somebody in Japan or somebody in France or somebody in, Russia?
Right. Very good question. This is where I'll answer it. It is more important as opposed to for me as a creator. Well, let me answer it on a macro and a micro level. On a micro level, which I think is more personal, it's more important to me that I not concern myself with what audiences in Europe want or in Japan want. It's more important for me to do the type of work that I feel that resonates with who I specifically am trying to communicate with. So, for example, I'm doing my project now called Brother Robo. Black boy joy, black girl joy, giant robots, right? Because I have a niece and nephew who are 8 and 12, or 8 and 11, or 8 and 12, and they need and want to see themselves in that kind of vein, right? So that's one. Hi, John Conqueror, which, Mike, I've shown you images from, right? Hey, I'll never be Alex Raymond, but I want to try. And I want to do an adventure comic that's influenced by the Phantom, damn it. That's what I want to do. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be all that I do, but I want to do that and do it with heart. And that's Afrofuturism, retro Afrofuturism. So I have these stories I want to do. I'm more pressed now to simply get them out of my brain and my body, right? Because I believe if I do that, I can affect change on the macro level, which is there's always an audience for work that can be found. If the work can be seen, heard, purchased, held, touched, or felt, there's an audience for it. And Afrofuturism deals in the modality of Black culture on a worldwide level. You know, there are those who are really coming into their own in terms of practicing it. So I'm not so concerned about the younger folks coming up because they're going to be just fine. We're in good hands. I lectured with this writers group called Voodoo Knots recently, which is like a Clarion science fiction writers workshop, but it's called the Voodoo Knots. And I talked with them about what I did, and I think we're in good hands. So I'm not so worried about them. My concern now is, can I get out those stories that mean so much to me? Can I get them out in comics and in film? That's what my focus is. So I believe I can affect change by, it's like the Hergé book there. He got 1 through 8 books. That's what I want. I want to be able to have those collections because I'm the person who's responsible for my bibliography. And that's my focus. Does that answer your question?
I guess partially, yeah. But I also think, like, what culturally would you think that an African in Africa would get from it? Or, you know, because it's done from an American Black perspective.
Yeah.
So there's tropes to every type of fiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so are there things that you bring as a Black creative,
Sure,
a Black author that will carry, like I said, carry back through over to Europe that maybe is, you know, is it a flavor that they have not experienced before? You know,
I think absolutely. It's absolutely a flavor that hasn't been so much experienced before. But I think Afrofuturism is not just American centric. Afrofuturism is diasporic. It's all over the world. There are like Roy Okupe, who just got his deal with our Dark Horse. He's African. That's Afrofuturism. There are tons of African cartoonists out there, animators out there who are kicking butt that are doing Afrofuturist work. I just think that Afrofuturism is much bigger than the West. And as a result of it, the most important thing is making sure that those stories, those products, those projects go to market is the most important thing. It's like hip hop. You know, yeah, it started in the Bronx, but it ain't of the Bronx anymore. It's the entire world.
Right.
And only over time, through exposure to multiple generations of audience, will it then affect the type of change that you and I probably won't even live to see. Afrofuturism, I will say, has the opportunity, if handled correctly, over the coming years to be as explosive. Well, it's already explosive as a cultural phenomenon because the Carnegie Hall Afrofuturism Festival is coming up in February and March of next year, which is to be the Carnegie Hall. It's the biggest cultural institution on the planet, and boom, Afrofuturism is going to be exposed there. And I'm fortunate enough to say that I'm one of the featured players. Black Metropolis, my gallery one-man show is going to be at the Schomburg, and there's going to be a live reading at the Apollo Theater, backed by an orchestra with the pictures. You know, and the big, the Sandman's going to come out with the cane, that type of thing. So I'm fortunate to be able to do that, and I love the fact that I can do that and not feel prisoner to comics. I can do anything because our stories are so much larger, and that's what I'm trying to do.
That's powerful, and I think
that's innovating to me.
I think it's important for people to hear that, especially when people are there's a lot of people that are so like landlocked into comics.
Yeah.
And this is where
comics. I love comics.
Well, right. Don't get me wrong. And that's kind of where we're coming from, even with the whole Wimpy Kid thing, where people are just gobsmacked to know that, Dogman sells more than X-Men. It just kind of messes with people's heads.
And yet, within our business, there's still a lot of people who, if you said Dogman, they would go, "What?"
Right.
Well, let me use this as an example. So I know this dude. He's been toiling away for decades. He does this project called Leon, right? He just got signed by Scholastic to 3 books, right? And it's because his work is fly. And the great thing is your work fits very comfortably in the already comfortably established middle grade medium. And I'm going to say, hey, I'm just making my ass right now, in about 3 years, man, I'm going to come to you for a few favors because I know I'm not going to be able to get easy access to you and everything. But I already know what's happening. Your work is going to blow up because it's right in there. That's right. Leon, right? Now, Infinitum, as Jerry has told me, Jerry Kraft, our mutual friend, it's like I'm having to help to build that market. That's the one thing I will say, Mike. It's so new. Sometimes being the first out of the wall on a mainstream level sucks. Sometimes it sucks. But you know what? Nobody cares. So my job is to get to the next project. If I want to see my work have an impact all over the world, my job is to simply finish my projects and get them out the door. And the audience will find it.
You have to make the work, right?
Got to sit in the chair. You got to make the work.
Well, let me comment very quickly on that. So I sat in the chair on Infinitum. I was working for 18 months, 7 days a week, 10 to 18 hours a day, and I messed my arms up.
Yeah,
that's not healthy. So I bought a Bowflex weight bench. I got bikes. I have an ergonomic freedom chair. It's very good. It's the lumbar thing is very awesome. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm now trying to be a bit, well, as I've said this before, we're athletes. We're athletes. And we have to treat our bodies like that. We have to treat our bodies like, we can't be like Larry Bird drinking liquor at halftime. We can't do that. You got to be like, LeBron James. You got to be a better specimen.
Oh, James, right there.
Hey, man, I know, but we can't do that. We can't do that because
nothing but old granddad in there. Huh?
It's something I would tell my students back when I taught real heavy. I would tell them, I said, it's unfortunate for you guys. I said, and they were like, what do you mean? I said, well, you guys are the first generation. And I'm saying this now for the people who can receive it. I said, you guys are the first generation in like 2013, 2012, 2013, where my generation, we're not retiring. We're actually more in demand now. This is the busiest I've ever been in my entire career, right? It's because I have experience. I know that digital. I can tell a story. I can make a bad story look good, right? I can tell the hell of a bad story, right? And I have that experience. I have the scar tissue, right? Because of that, and because there's such a need for content in all these different arenas, it means that there's opportunity. And now the younglings, it used to be that you could be young and sexy. Now you can't just be young and sexy anymore. You actually have to have something to say. And that is bad for the young and sexy. And, maybe, but it's great for us. So we got to do better. I got to do better. I can't speak for anyone, but for me, I got to do better. So
you know what, Tim, you make a great point. And, I was talking to somebody not too long ago about, just like the future of my scholastic career and what happens next. And I said, what my job is now is to be here to make the books.
Make it long.
Right? Like my job is to not die. My job is to see this through. And that sounds
those locks to be good and gray, not brown with a little pepper in there. It needs to be all white.
Oh man, right? And people laugh at that, but it's kind of like it's in Tim will attest to this, and Mike knows it's all on us, and there's nobody's coming to fill in for you, right? If Mike doesn't do the strip, there's no strip. You know what I mean?
The irony, they're not coming to help, but they want you to continue to help them. Babe, come on. Look, why don't you come in here and help me finish some of these pages, babe?
Well, right. And, and that's funny. And maybe real quick, because we're going to start wrapping you up, Tim. We've had a fantastic time talking. I know Mike was talking not too long ago about looking for I don't even think you were looking, Mike. I think you were just talking about, maybe the need for some new studio help. And then people were just kind of like offering their services, but they were whack.
I'll do your covers.
Right. And it's just, people like, yourself, Tim, Mike, and a lot of the people we have on here are such high level athletes. I like that. I like that term. You're performing at such a high level. People sitting in the stands watching people jump into the water and not make a splash behind them. Like, I can do that. I can hold my soda cup. I would get up on this ladder and jump.
This work.
And you can't do.
If you had 100 people apply, less than 10 would be a possibility. And out of that, to be honest, it would probably be 2 or 3 that would actually really work out, because most people don't have the personality type that it takes to do this.
Yeah.
Here is what I learned. Get your interns from digital arts programs. That's what I'm learning. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I never expect my interns or my assistants to get me 100% of the way. I just need them to get me within 50 to 75%, and then I can do the rest myself. So I have learned from when I have used assistants before in the past, the distant past, that was a very helpful thing, because at the end, I'm going to need that 25% to make the work mine anyway. I had 2 assistants on Infinitum for about 3 weeks. Blossom Blair, who's an incredible artist.
That's a great name.
Yeah, Greg Anderson, Elise's sister, man. She is amazing. And so I used 2 people for a second, and then everything else was me. So I feel so encouraged in so many ways. I think the possibilities are wide and far. I just think, as you said, brother, I just want to live. I want to live to see it. I think, Mike, you make a very good point. It's like, I do want to see, I can't let it rule my thoughts, but I do want to see what will happen once I get more projects under my belt, because I'm a late bloomer. I'm like, where Darwin Cook, like I said, when did he really get into comics? Was he already in his 40s when he came back? In his 40s?
Mid 40s.
Mid 40s. So that's the way I feel. And I felt bad for a while, because I was like, oh God, I don't have the bibliography. It's like, yo, dude, you had to feed your kids, relax. You worked on a few games, your weird games. You raise your kids, they're still alive. But like, I'm here in my studio, is rebuilt, the next gold. I know we're going to shut down in a moment. I'm going to do what you guys do. You guys been running this vlog thing for over a year, like machines. You know what I mean?
Like, technology makes that easy. It's not like I'm having to go out and decide which tree to cut down. This is going to be my vlog. I got to machine this vlog this week.
This is how you share your stories. This is how you share news about your stories. And I'm taking an example from you guys. So I'm literally, I'm not going to move the camera because I don't want you to see, but it's like I bought lights, things, because I got to turn into not only a functioning studio, but a shooting studio.
Yeah. And, the technology as it is makes it accessible. And that's one of my old things, we're going to wrap this up, is that especially when the Facebook Live started and people started doing lives on Instagram, and you would see like kind of like the worst parts of that come out, like somebody walked through the mall with the camera bouncing and looking up somebody's nose. I was like, you can hook this up. Just get you a little light, get a decent mic, and it's not easy, but if you just put a little bit of heart into it, you could do amazing things. And I think that's where, again, there's a fear there, that, anybody can do it, but not everybody can do it at the same time, if that makes sense.
It does.
Our buddy Trey H says, I don't understand it all, but I'm soaking everything up like a sponge. Well, I'm glad.
Because
I'm
at
glad
the end of the day, the fear, this is what I've tried to convey to my students, perhaps it'll expand a little bit, that there's no such thing as bad drawing. There's only your style. I know that's terrible, but it's true. It's only your style. And as long as it communicates appropriately, George Harriman had one of the most regressive drawing styles, but Crazy Cat changed the world. There was a black man who changed the world through his cartoon. So, hey, we will see what happens. I think the next 5 years is going to be very interesting.
And I wanted to give a shout out to Alison Bechtel real quick.
She's amazing.
Because Alison Bechtel changed the game.
She did.
With graphic novels. And, just like where the industry is just because of Fun Home, I don't think Alison gets enough credit for that book.
Allison lives in Vermont, so I was married in Vermont, and she talked with me very briefly, gave me advice. She's wonderful. Jeff Smith, awesome. Jerry Kraft, did my cover blurb. Keeps making fun of me when I get out of line. John Jennings, Stacey Robinson, Juno Diaz has been great to me. When he didn't have to, and so a lot of people I have to be thankful. Jamar, you've been excellent. We with the Duttons.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you get these Charles S. Duttons.
Yeah, the Duttons are awesome. Can I ask one final question?
Yes,
Mike. There's this strip that was done in the 70s. I can't remember the name of it, but it was featured these two kind of action heroes. One of them had white hair like Race Band, and they would have these adventures. And I remember one particularly where a car was sinking under the water, and the car was filling up with water, but I can't for the life of me remember.
Was it Steve Roper and Mike Nomad?
Yes. That strip changed my life, man.
I don't know if I've actually ever seen a reprint of that strip.
That guy.
I saw some original. I forget now. They used to run it on the sports page. I remember. Yes. I think. Yeah. Which is odd. I guess they ran that on the sports page, and they ran Doonesbury on the editorial page. Mm-hmm. Because wasn't one of those? I think one of the characters was a sports reporter or something like that.
Steve Roper and Mike Nomad. That's right. That's right. And we used to read that in the Clarksdale Press Register, along with, check it out, Prince Valiant. But Cullen, was it?
Well, it was Cullen Murphy.
Yeah, Cullen Murphy. That was the stuff I grew up on. In the comic strips, but comic books, it was always like Spain Rodriguez. Totally inappropriate.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. That when you go back to the 70s and the 80s, you still had very clear underground.
Yep.
Like sort of middle underground, like the Hernandez brothers. Because you had Crumb, which was like people having sex.
Right.
Totally right.
Or not as bad as Spain though. Spain was
right. But then you had mainstream.
Right.
Or you had small like the Rocketeer, things
Dave
like
Stevens.
that. So you had these very specific channels. Mm-hmm. Now it's kind of like all blurred together.
And I love it.
And because now you have webcomics, and you can have any kind of.
I love it. It allows someone like me to be able to do my thing.
And even when you would go to a convention, I remember Jamar and I went to see Spiegelman and a bunch of those guys speak. And they were kind of like, when they found out what I did, they were kind of like, oh, you draw those horrible mainstream comics. You're not a real cartoonist. Good day.
I said good day. Yeah.
That's why I love going to Ohio with the Billy Ireland Museum. They open to all different things, and I love the work that Jeff Smith has done there, and you know, I think the year I went there a few years ago, they had Kyle Baker and Sergio Aragones. They were honoring them. So, comics is much larger than that type of stuff. And I mean, the only thing I resent, and I told him this, he doesn't know who I am. Why I've infinite about that. I want to win an Eisner. I really do. It's vain, I know. But why would Barry Windsor Smith release his 35 years in creation book this year? It's like, no. But it's brilliant. I have it on my shelf there. Where is it? Monsters? Brilliant.
Yeah.
Tim, have you been to Europe? Have you traveled to France?
I have not.
The love that they give cartooning there is, I don't think I've ever seen it anywhere else.
Well, that's just part of the European culture.
Yeah.
Right? Where they're surrounded by art. They're surrounded by art. They appreciate art. Mm-hmm. I think there's still that thing. Well, like one of the big differences now is somebody, I think it was Kurt Busiek brought it up, but I've talked about this before. It was the other day on Twitter. Mm-hmm. It used to be they would talk about the merits of like, hey, did you see that new film? Right. And that was really good. The first thing now they talk about is the money. Doesn't matter if it's good. It's about whether it made a lot of money, right? Not about any of the creative process or anything else. The first thing they say, the new blockbuster made, $43 million this weekend and is considered to be a failure or, a success or whatever. And how different that is, because you're talking about you talk about a painting selling at Christie's. Not that it's a great painting. It's just that some crazy rich person can spend $60 million to buy one painting. That's what it's, so it's like this weird cultural bragging right of being able to brag about the value of something, not the thing, but the money, right? It's not about the value that it brings to your life or it has brought to our culture or is bringing to our culture. It's about the value. And I think that affects younger artists a lot more because there's a lot of my career, nobody talked about royalties. Nobody talked about any of that stuff. Right. And now I think that affects along with the other downsides of social media, which has upsides, but it also has that other side where it's like, if you're not making money, if you're not trending, then your work, is my work, is it reaching anybody? Is it good?
Right. Where's my blue check, Mike?
Well, I'm going to say
where's my NFT?
well, let me say this in that regard. I think I agree with what you're saying. I think, however, in my experience over the last 7 months, I still have a long way to go to make my book what I want it to be. I think there's tremendous opportunity to change and alter the conversation in that regard. That's why when I'm talking, I'm talking about finishing and making sure that, you do the work that moves your heart. I think whenever I talk with students, and I do a lot of that, I've done since January over 90 events now, and I'm going to do 90 more. This is 91. I think our position as elders, really, not to age anybody, but as elders, we have the opportunity and the ability for people who look up to us to really, really change the nature of the conversation. At least that's for myself. I can only speak for myself. Mm-hmm. And I'm enjoying that because no one told me a damn thing when I was in that conversation at all. Yeah. But now I feel happy to be able to provide that.
Tim, let me ask you I was going somewhere with the Europe thing, and we kind of answered that already.
Yeah, I need to go to Europe, by the way.
Well, let me ask you a question, because there's a very hot light pointed on you now.
Yes.
Well, not literally, but you know what I'm saying.
Right.
And as Infinitum grows and your space in book publishing grows, and you turn into what you've already become, a spokesman in some degrees for this part of the art form, How do you deal with the pressure of that? Like we just showed your Microsoft commercial at the
wow.
beginning of this. How are you compartmentalizing that?
I am loving it.
Okay.
I'm loving it. Look, man, I worked my entire career I was on those obscure margins. You know what I mean? I'm primarily known, if I'm known at all, for the work I did for someone else or in conjunction with someone else. I was never able to make that breakthrough. Now I'm being known for what I do, and I'm helping to move a medium forward, a modality, Afrofuturism forward. I'm loving it. Is it exhausting? Yes, very exhausting, but I love it. I love it. I mean, come on. How many people get this opportunity to do that?
Right.
So if I'm going to be the Big Daddy Kane of Afrofuturism, I'm down with it, baby. Let's do it.
You need backup dancers to be the Big Daddy Kane of Afrofuturism.
I dance myself, man. I don't need no backup dancers. Let's do it. I'll put my interns to work and let them dance for me.
Because you need to get some dance steps together for the interns on day one.
Because it's show business. Show business. This is the thing I tell people. It's like it's not just about doing the work. You have to do the work, then you have to show the work. Very important.
That's true, and I want to start wrapping up. But
right.
that's something that we talk about, or I talk about maybe on Coffee Break more than anything, is that it's not just enough to be a dope cartoonist or be a really solid artist. Yes, and Mike and I will fight to our death down the side of a mountain about this. I love the art form. I love the history of comics. I love all that. I think the pressures of a modern cartoonist are not like the cats from back in the day where they didn't have to have a podcast. They didn't have to do process videos or be interviewed every 5 minutes or have somebody stick a camera in front of them at the comic book convention because I'm trying to go to the bathroom. You have to be on and be a presence and have a thing on top of being the cartoonist. So that's another business part that I don't think we speak to enough.
Jerry Kraft is a pure cartoonist. Pure cartoonist. People are like, well, okay, he's big. Now I'm like, yeah, but he was in that van cranking down those miles on that road to those lightly attended events for decades. But he always kept doing his work.
Yeah.
So now, because he has that same work ethic and the fact that he has, y'all saw him on CBS News Morning last week, had his branding together. He's like, built for that.
Yeah.
So I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
Taking notes. So the world we're in now is that. I think all styles are applicable as long as you have compelling stories and you keep it. I don't think everything necessarily needs to be positive, but it needs to be forward and innovative.
Well, last thing, but do you think, and this is kind of going to us having a vlog, and somebody said in the chat about anybody can set up their studio with $50. What about those people out there, Tim and Mike, who just really want to be great artists, but they don't have the other part?
Yeah, I have a perfect answer. Can I start first, Mike?
You're the guest, of course.
Okay. Well, man, but so here's the deal. Not everybody needs to be in front of a camera. Some people just need to do an audio podcast. Some people don't even need to talk. Some people need to write. You need to find out what your mode of communication is. Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this a lot. It's like, for me, I can talk too much. So I can fill up 15 minutes of content on a weekly basis without even sweating, even though I'm sweating now under this light, right? I can do it. You notice how I just blew about 5 seconds by talking about the light? I can do it. It's not a problem for me. But some folks can't talk. Some folks need to write. Some folks need to talk audio. Some folks don't even need to do that. Like, one of the things I'm going to do is I use Procreate a lot. I've done, since 2016 with me and my twin brother. I've done, since the 2000s, I've done probably 800 portraits, all digital. Sometimes they don't want to hear you talk. Sometimes you just want to see the portrait. Find your lane. My brother Daoud Bey said it. Find your lane, stick in it, and ride it till the wheels fall off.
Nice.
And make sure you got your coffee cup there while you're doing it.
I think it's all personality driven, because there are some people I know. I was just talking to somebody we all know very well today, Brett, about social media, and he's not a social media guy. You notice you don't see him on social media. You know, some people live on social media. Some people don't ever go to their Facebook, or go once a week, right? You have some people that are so addicted to it they can't actually concentrate to do their daily work, because they're like, oh, what? Yeah, oh, they're trying to constantly go, right? There's like I think that it was, you're right, there was not something I'm glad that I didn't have for the first part of my career. I did not have social media. It would have made it easier as a teenager to be able to contact people, and, as we always talk about, learn about things and get feedback and all that stuff. But I also see that it gives so many young people I know such anxiety at the same time. So they're like, because there's all this FOMO, the fear of missing out, comparison. I know we're all old enough that we formed our personalities and everything long before we had to deal with the onslaught of social media, which can be brutal. I mean, that's another thing we've talked about before, and I see a lot of people talking about that much now, especially on Twitter, because there's a real mean side to people just coming in and like, oh, I saw Jerry, I saw Tim, and he said something, and I don't like it, and I want to. He's got to agree with me, or I want to crush his career, because that's how people are getting now. They get very inflamed. So there's good and bad, and depending upon your personality, you might be good at. Like, I have friends who love to argue on Facebook and are always getting thrown in Facebook jail. Right? I've never been thrown in Facebook jail because I'm not going to argue with anybody on Facebook. Right. But some people are going to go over in the corner and create something magical. And if you want to go over in the corner and look and see it, oh, great. They're so interior. And that's one of the things I really learned the last couple of years about teaching, because teaching the painters or animators, even as opposed to illustrators or cartoonists, because illustrators and cartoonists are the people that live the most inside their head. You're responding to this. You're not responding to the world. You're responding to this, right? And for some people, they're so far in here in their imagination, they're not good. They didn't develop those skills. That's why it's really, you were talking about Paris, Collins. I've met other people at shows, the same thing. They really have that showmanship. They really like to talk with people. They have the gift for gab. And then you have the other artist who is just a brilliant artist, but they don't have that. Their personality is too inward. It's not a bad thing. It's just the way they are.
I have to say this. Yes, no argument with what you're saying, but man, I've been doing this a long time, and I never really broke through in the early part of my career, but most of my career. And I'm good, man. I'm good. It's like Arthur C. Clarke was interviewed once years ago when he was talking about the early days of the internet. They were talking, well, what is this? He said, well, eventually this thing will be miniaturized and all computers will be interconnected. I would encourage people to go on YouTube and find this clip. And they asked him, well, isn't this going to be negative, have a negative impact on society? And he said, it will have some impact. He said, but the benefits outweigh the shortcomings. And I believe that. A person like me, trust me, I have tried to do a story like Infinitum a gazillion times over the last 30 freaking years. The fact that now exists the environment because of Black Panther, because of all of the Lovecraft country, that I now can get my stuff out. Hey, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good. I'm real good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I want to ask both you guys this too, because it's come up before in private conversation. Do you feel that it will be a fad? Like, okay, like you see a lot of, because of Black Panther, now suddenly they go like, oh, black people like black people like superheroes, black people like, you know, that of course then everybody sees that and they want to make it. Do you think that this is a lasting thing, or only lasts as long as it makes
money?
You start off, Jamar, and then I'll take it after that.
Because it's sort of like the whole like Black Lives Matter thing, all the stuff. I mean, it's all swirling around. It's all sort of connected. Right. So do you think like I always say, I remember Occupy Wall Street, and that was a big thing, right? And I've lived long enough, so I've seen all kinds of different permutations of Black culture. I'm Black, I'm proud of the whole, from the '60s and King all the way to now, right?
Right.
And you'll see a thing come up, and go up, So do you think we're on the upswing because of money, Black people spending money and saying, hey, I like this and I'm going to support this? Or do you think it's going to have longer or deeper roots because of that?
What I think, and I think where we are right now is the byproduct of a lot. It's almost like a game of Tetris. There are a lot of pieces that fell all in a perfect line.
That you couldn't predict were going to fall, right?
That you couldn't predict. That put us where we are right now. And everything has kind of helped propel us a little bit further. The whole last summer where everything was on fire was a part of it. People rioting. No, I'm sorry. The riots from other things.
Otherwise known as burning down the Apple Store.
Right. All of these kind of byproducts of the pandemic, really. Right. And I've said this to a bunch of people in private. If there was no way if there was a way you could have left your house without wearing a mask to the supermarket, and you didn't have to like hoard toilet paper, and it was business as usual, we wouldn't be where we are right now. As far as this cultural shift, especially in like black books. Now, I think it would have come. It may not have come yet, but I think it was still moving that direction. But all of these Tetris pieces have put us in this, I'll say perfect, only in the sense that we're in a really fantastic place right now in our careers because of the things that have happened before. Jerry Craft winning the Newbery Medal has been one of the most giant things that have happened for all of us. And I tell Jerry that like every 3 days. You know what I'm saying?
Huge, man.
That has allowed me to be in a place where I could have this conversation with
He made it okay, man. He made it okay. So now I guess the $100 question about this is it going to last? Is really
that's what I'm asking. Do you think it'll go up, peak, and then go down and be replaced whatever the next craze, you know what I mean? Because whatever the next hot thing is.
Well, see, I think that our the culture's shifting, and people's ideas about how the world has worked up until this point has shifted beyond the fad part. There's a lot of people who are now, I'm not going to say woke, but people are in a different space than they were in the past 30, 40 years of their lives. We're like, oh, wow, there's things I just learned watching the show that I didn't know were real. That thing happened for real. I had no idea that happened. That's not going to go away.
Right.
And that's going to stay with people. And I think that shift is going to open up more doors for more voices and for more people to be successful telling their stories. So I wouldn't consider this a fad per se. I think it's going to be more of a push on our parts as creators to, like Tim says, to do dope shit that are now going to keep people intrigued.
Let me just add to that very quickly.
Please.
So you had mentioned Black Lives Matter, but let's put that to the side. Let's go to Occupy Wall Street.
Sure.
Without Occupy Wall Street, you would not have this $3.5 trillion stimulus. There are things in that platform. Not universal income. That's a little bit off, right? Universal, I think we're 30 to 50 years from that. But stuff like certain social contracting, the expansion of the social safety net, that to have mentioned those things 10 years ago would have been political suicide. And I think the idea of, say, taxing the rich to pay for this thing, that was suicide, political suicide, just 10 years ago. Right? So I think all of these moving Tetris parts that Jamar is talking about are essential. Now, COVID said to hell with all that and allowed for 20 years worth of change to happen in 18 months. However, the other thing is technology. The technology, oh my God, it's changed and disrupted business models so catastrophically and so creatively that you can't predict, but you can also at the same time predict what's going to happen. And I think that's why I feel so positive about it. I mean, yeah, that's something like, oh God, I wish Infinitum could reach more people. It's like, yeah, start your blog, Tim. Be more exact with your social media posts, Tim. It's not like the opportunity isn't there. Oh man, I'm not covered by these bloggers. Write your own blog post, Tim. Reach out to, like, I didn't understand, forgive me, that when you have a book as an author, you don't wait on your publicist or your publisher to do that. I've learned how to write pitches to writers, to journalists. It has helped 75% of what I do. It's because I have to take the initiative to do that. Technology and the ability to be able to make a phone call, right? Phone call. I was in the Mississippi Book Festival. Now, unfortunately, they canceled it due to COVID. How did I get invited? Because I made a phone call to Steve Yates, who referred me to Ellen at the Mississippi Book Festival, and within 5 minutes, I was invited. That's how it happens. Technology. It's just that now you don't have to make just a phone call. Now you can send an email, and you can be nice and polite. And those things are transformative. So is it going to be a fad? Sure, if we do horrible work. But if we do good work consistently, and we deliver, and we go out and talk like we have sense, and not engage in a kind of a versus battle type thing, I think we're going to be just fine.
He said versus. That's
Tech. I was like, what in the world is going on? Are they arguing with one another? What is happening? Right? But anyway.
I think this has been a fantastic conversation. Tim, I thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Buckets. I think this was a great evening. And Tim brought that good energy because the storm passed. Like I heard
you just talked it right off.
Monroe, she was in our corner tonight. Storm was in our corner. She said, weather, bad weather, go away.
Bless the goddess. Yeah, I mean, so
thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you, man. Tim, where can people follow you and pick up a copy of of all of your books?
Okay, so you can find Infinitum and Afrofuturist Tale where all fine books are so all over the planet Earth, which is so weird. So if you're in England, look at I forget the name of the stores, but Amazon.uk, you can look at it. If you're in France, the same thing. If you're in Brazil, you can find it everywhere. Japan, I thought it was a pirated copy. It was actually a Japanese bookstore carrying Infinitum, so it was weird. But you can find it everywhere. Maddie's Rocket, which was independently produced, will be delivered to a publisher within the next 30 days, and we're gonna see what we're gonna see. So hopefully some announcements can be made by the time New York Comic Con comes around. So that's my next project.
Beautiful. Hey, were you going to say something else, Tim?
Can I do my hand thing?
Oh,
I'm gonna
well,
teach y'all guys.
yeah, we're gonna do that. But
Okay, good. I want to do my hand because
yeah,
I got to do the Kirby thing, man. It's like it's fun, man. It's like yo, man. Anyway, go ahead.
I love that we're on brand. I love it, guys. Thank you all for hanging out with us for the podcast. As you know, every Wednesday at 8 p.m. EST, we will be here. It's talking that good talk. Thanks again to Tim for has been a fantastic guest. I think we've all learned things tonight, and already the power of P2P. People have already copped your book in the chat. They're like, "Yo, I want it. Where do I get it?" Yo, I got that.
Already copped.
I copped it. Already copped. I copped it in several flavors. So thanks again to Tim, to my buddy Mike Manley. Next week we will be back with. You ready, Mike? Boot camp.
Oh.
Everybody loves a boot camp. Oh, there it is. Boot camp.
Whenever you guys need me to come on and do some 3D stuff, let me know.
Oh, that's a great idea.
It's up to you. No rush, no pressure. But when you want me to do it, let me know.
No, that's a great idea. Thank you so much. And people are already saying they copped it. Everybody in the chat is loving it. Even my dog, he's involved. Jerry Kraft's a magnificent. That's my line.
Oh, I finally go. I got it done from Jerry. Excellent. Yes.
I love it.
Woo!
So, we'll be back next week, God willing, with another pencil to pencil. So, you know what to do now. Time to wash those. All right. What are we doing, Tim?
Oh, sorry. What?
You're going to give us some Kirby hands. What's the other hands you want?
Well, I was going to do the other hands, but y'all was starting with because y'all do the thing and then the Kirby hands. I forgot. Go for it.
Well, no, you do it. Let's see.
All right.
Do your hand.
You guys, so check it out.
Okay.
Whose hand is this?
Oh. Yeah, what hand is that, Mike? Who does hands like that?
I don't know. Is that a Buscema hand?
That's a John Byrne hand.
That's a Byrne hand.
And who is this? Who is that?
Oh, that's a
Gil Kane.
Gil Kane. Oh yeah. So that's it, man. I always do the Gil Kane when y'all do the Kirby hands.
Y'all
don't know that.
I thought you were do like a Sylvester.
No, that's Gil Kane. Gil Kane is always like that. I always feel like they're hurting when they're doing that part because the tendons and stuff. But yeah, I love Gil Kane hands, man.
I love it.
He was one of the great hand guys.
He was amazing.
That's great. All right, guys, we're over time. Let's wrap this up. Guys, we'll see you next week. And always remember to wash those Kirby hands. Give it to them. Yeah, that's beautiful. Reed Richards.